So I don't know about you, but whenever I hear birds singing or insects buzzing, the babbling of a stream, I feel deeply relaxed and at peace with the world. And this is because we're a part of nature, and nature is deeply connected to us. There's a word that describes this called biophilia, and science has actually shown that spending time in nature can not only make us happier, but can allow us to live up to 20% longer. So I'd like to do a really quick experiment together. And I'd love for all of you to shut your eyes and to think of your happy place. And I'd love you now to open your eyes, please. And if your happy place was in nature, can you put your virtual hand up or your real hand? So I think what we can see is the fact that the majority of people, their happy places in nature, that there's a deep connection between our happiness and the natural world. When I was a child, I remember going on long journeys, and at the end of the journey, the windscreen and the bumper would be covered in squash bugs. But that doesn't happen anymore. And even the summer, when I was in the garden with my family, looking out for for butterflies and for bees, it was eerily quiet. It was deathly quiet. And I think for me, that really highlighted the urgency and the severity of the climate and the biodiversity crises. And what's quite interesting is we think of our childhoods as being more abundant, or the childhoods of our parents or our grandparents, but almost every generation, we reset what we think abundance looks like. And this is called shifting baseline syndrome. And I think it's so important that we remember the abundance that we once had, so we have a goal and a target of where we want to get back to. And 100 years ago, naturalist and writer William Henry Hudson described walking through the British countryside at dusk. He described it like this: one could almost feel the weight of insect life in the air. Moths of all shapes and sizes fluttered in the twilight, while the relentless chirp of crickets filled the air, blending with the distant call of nightjars. Every blade of grass seemed alive with some small creature, each contributing to the vibrant chorus of the night. And going back even further, 200 years ago, writer Thomas Pennant described the incredible abundance we had of the British coast. Immense shoals of herring were trailed by schools of enormous bluefin tuna. The sea appeared black with their numbers, a living expanse teeming with multitudes of fish as far as the eye could see. But there are glimmers of hope returning. This summer, we saw the return of thousands of Eastern Atlantic bluefin tuna, a fish that was almost extinct in the 1990s. And these majestic creatures grow up to 10 feet in length, and their return is being linked to the fishing quotas and conservation methods, but also potentially affected by our warming sea temperatures. And this graph is from our World in Data, and it shows that all around Europe, wildlife is making a remarkable comeback. Bison here, that were once almost extinct, now number 10,000 animals across Europe. We're also seeing animals like brown bears and elk and Iberian lynx are all flourishing. Beavers have increased over 16,000% in recent years. And they're amazing keystone engineers that are incredible for biodiversity. It's thought that these comebacks are due to strict protections against hunting, habitat restoration, and legal safeguards. And today, all around the world, there are hundreds of thousands of amazing nature regeneration projects happening. And I just want to share a few with you that are really ambitious and really exciting, that cover countries and continents. South America, you've got Chris Tompkins, who was the ex-CEO of Patagonia, and her late husband, Doug Tompkins, who founded Spirit and North Face. And they pooled all of their money, all of their wealth over the years, $345 million, to buy 15 million acres across Chile and Argentina. They created 15 national parks, which they then gifted to those countries. They've been doing incredible work like reintroducing keystone species. But I think what's most exciting is they're creating this wildlife corridor down the whole west coast of South America, right down to the tip, where they're also protecting 30 million marine acres. So they're reconnecting habitats and they're massively boosting biodiversity with all of the work they're doing. So it's really inspiring. And then over in Africa, over the last decade, we have the Great Green Wall, which is greening the Sahel region, combating the advancing Sahara Desert. So this is a green band that spreads across the whole of Africa. To date, they've regreened about 300,000 acres, but it's doing amazing things like it's creating food security. So in these earth boons, which are dug out, which you can see in the video here, the rainwaters get collected and then it allows them to grow food crops and to slowly regreen the whole areas, growing things like sorghum and maranga, pigeon pea, okra. And so not only is it providing food security, but it's preventing communities from leaving this area and migrating to cities by creating jobs. And so it's, an amazing initiative. And only in a decade, you can see from the pictures the amazing progress that they've made. And this half-moon earth boon technique has been around for thousands of years. So it's using ancient wisdom and applying it in a modern setting. And in southern Spain, there's an amazing project called Seawater Solutions. It's thought that around the world there's about 2 billion acres of salty marshland, salty wasteland. And here they're taking an approach in southern Spain called regenerative seawater agriculture. So this is essentially where you take rare plants that thrive in seawater and you cultivate them. And it not only creates food security, but it sequesters carbon and it massively boosts biodiversity. This is a 4,500 acre site in southern Spain. And it's thought around the world there's about 900 million hectares of degraded land that could be converted using this approach. But what I love most about it is with rising sea levels and encroaching saltwater, this is a great solution for adaptation and resilience that will work in the decades to come. And in China, they also have their own Great Green Wall. It's the 3 North Shelter Belt project that was launched in the 1970s. So it's actually one of the largest reforestation projects in the world, and it's halting the encroachment of the Gobi Desert from northern China. To date, they've regreened about 600 hectares of forest, and they've increased the forest cover across the north of China from 5% to 15% along China's northern border. They're incredibly ambitious. They're planning to continue until 2050, and they're targeting the creation of 88 million hectares of forest. And so I just want to touch on what I do at Earthly and how helping accelerate funding to nature protection and restoration. So we're really proud to be working with 700 businesses around the world in a range of different sectors and to have some great partners that are backing us. But at the heart of Earthly sits the science, and we've been working closely for the last 4 years with our scientific advisory board, who are all kind of experts and academics in the nature-based solutions space. They've helped us build this quality assessment that we use to screen nature-based projects. So we've taken lots of different data layers. We've taken public data, we've taken private data, we have things like geospatial data, and they allow us to screen these 106 quality indicators. A third of them sit across carbon, a third of them sit across biodiversity, and a third across people. So it's a really holistic approach. So you can see those pillar scores there in the infographic, and then we have an aggregate project score. I think the really interesting statistic to share is that in the last year, we've screened 400 projects, and only 8% of projects have met our minimum standards across those 106 quality indicators. So I think that's really, highlights the challenges we have in the market and the range of quality that we're seeing. Unlike other ratings agencies, we feed back the results to project developers. And, often we will support them with consulting of how to improve, or if there's a specific challenge that they're facing, we'll connect them to another project developer that's solved that challenge. We want to share best practice and improve the bar of quality across the market. So this is what we call our spider diagram, which shows some of the key quality indicators across carbon, biodiversity, and people. I think what's really interesting is through this process of screening projects, we get a deep understanding of the unique aspects of projects and the values of projects. And so that means when we have a company that comes to us that cares about health, we can not only recommend projects that meet our minimum standards across those 106 indicators, but we can recommend projects that really over-index on health. We can even dig into the impact metrics linked to health. So the number of people receiving healthcare, the number of vaccinations delivered, all linked to our clients' investments, to really bring to life the impact that's happening on the ground, to allow people to connect to these projects and these investments. We have a few different products. They all invest in nature. Our priority is to accelerate funds to nature protection and restoration. And so we use a few different vehicles to do this. The main one at the moment is high integrity carbon credits. And I think what's interesting is, despite the challenges that the market's had, with the right screening and due diligence process, carbon credits is still the most popular tool to get money to nature protection and restoration. We've recently launched voluntary biodiversity credits, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a second. We support innovation, so this is more philanthropic. So things like kelp seaweed projects that might not yet have a credit attached to them. And we're doing immediate purchases called spot purchases, but increasingly we're doing much more longer term multi-year agreements, locking in pricing for our clients multi-year. As you can see, this is our marketplace, some of our public projects. So we have a real diversity of different ecosystems and locations. You can see the scores on the top right. So we can, because we're agnostic to registry and we're agnostic to location, we can really showcase those best projects around the world. So this summer we launched our voluntary biodiversity credit. And here in the UK, we're very lucky we have a compliance market for house builders for biodiversity net gain units, where basically if you're building a new property development, you have to map out the biodiversity impacts and you have to offset it by 110% through these biodiversity net gain units. So we have a kind of government-approved, government-linked scheme here. And so what we've done is we've partnered with the South Downs National Park, who are one of the national parks here in the UK. We take these B&G units that are typically about half an acre and we fractionalize them into 9 square meters. And so one voluntary biodiversity credit is 1 9 square meter patch of land. And it's legally protected for 30 years for biodiversity recovery. So this is Iford Estate in the South Downs National Park, which is our first project site for biodiversity net gain. And I think what's really amazing about the 30-year connection is that our clients have this long-term relationship with the project for every voluntary biodiversity credit that they purchase, rather than this annual kind of cycle that you have for carbon credits. It's also somewhere they can take their team, they can take their customers, and they can like physically do a tour or stay there through ecotourism. And so you can see from the video, there's amazing biodiversity that's returning back to this site. We see the storytelling as being really important as well. And in an age where there's so much green hushing, where people are scared to talk about what they're doing, we really encourage our clients to do so in a compliant way. So we're mapping out not only those impact metrics that I told you about, but we're collecting the stories from the communities linked to the projects, and creating high quality video and photo assets that they can use to showcase the positive impact that's happening. So you have a customer hub, which is for training and for advice on green claims code and the regulation around what they can talk about. It also has all the information on the projects they've supported, visualization tools, and we have a public impact dashboard where you can showcase those impact metrics and the details about the projects that our clients have supported. So going back to looking at what's happening around the world, and I think the rights of nature movement is incredibly exciting and it's getting some serious momentum. And earlier this year, we had the Hiwaka Patanga Moana Treaty, where Maori and Pacific leaders came together and they, for the first time, recognized whales as legal persons. They gave whales legal personhood, which means in a court of law, whales now have the same legal rights as humans. And this is a really amazing milestone to protect these incredible keystone engineers. It's backed with a $100 million fund to support it. And there's even talk of whales being recognized as official ocean ambassadors at the United Nations. And it's not just species. We're seeing around the world, the Wanganui River in New Zealand received legal personhood in 2017. Parts of the Amazon rainforest in Colombia were granted legal personhood in 2018. The Yamuna River in India and the Ganges River in India were both given legal personhood in 2017 in response to their cultural and ecological significance and value that they can offer. And we're seeing ecocide gather some great momentum around the world. Earlier this year, 3 Pacific countries brought ecocide to the International Criminal Court, and they started the process for it to be recognized as an international crime. We saw this year Belgium enshrine ecocide into its legal framework. The EU earlier this year updated their international crime guidelines to include ecocide as a qualified offence, and Mexico is preparing similar legislation. So I think with ecocide, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when we'll see global adoption. And we had COP last year, we had the 30 by 30 agreement protecting 30% of the world's land by 2030. We then saw the EU nature restoration law follow suit, again 30% by 2030. And a few weeks ago at COP16 in Cali, we saw great momentum building on these pledges that we've had. So I think if we extrapolate out this positive progress and we continue to 2050, what might that world look like in 2050? So I think by 2050, with nature tech and AI-driven solutions, we'll have a real-time understanding of the ecological health all across the planet. We'll be using drones to plant trees in hard-to-reach places. We'll be using satellite to track live wildlife migrations and bioacoustic sensors all around the planet to monitor real-time biodiversity health. I think technology will have become an indispensable ally for conservation. In the rights of nature movement would have flourished around the world, ecosystems from rivers to forests to entire biomes will be granted legal personhood. And this shift will mean that natural entities will have a voice in the courts, and any harm against them will be met with legal action. Communities worldwide will actively protect and restore these natural entities in a new role as legal nature guardians, recognizing their intrinsic value and their right to exist. Ecocide is now recognized as an international crime, with nations worldwide adopting strict legal frameworks to hold individuals and corporations accountable for environmental destruction. And this has led to a significant decline in activities that harm the planet, as the legal repercussions serve as a powerful deterrent. But I think most importantly, ecocide is now seen as completely socially unacceptable, on a par with war crimes or genocide. And by 2050, the majority of businesses will be regenerative. They'll have a deep understanding of their impact on nature and their relation to nature, and they would have done everything they can to mitigate these negative externalities. But even more so, businesses will be giving back more to the planet than they need to take to exist. They're having a net positive or nature positive impact on our planet. So in a way, we've turned consumption into a force for good to help protect and restore our planet. And by 2050, the ambitious target of protecting 30% of the Earth's land and oceans has not only been met, but exceeded. International collaborations led to the creation of vast networks of protected areas, wildlife corridors and marine sanctuaries, fostering unprecedented biodiversity recovery. By 2050, we've returned 50% of the planet to wilderness, and for the first time, we're living in harmony with nature, and the climate and biodiversity crises are under control. I just want to share my happy place with you. This is rock pooling off the coast of Cornwall with my wife and children. And it's where we go in with a net and a bucket, and you catch crabs and fish and prawns and snails and look at them in the bucket before releasing them soon after. But it's something that I used to do as a child, and doing it with my children and watching their excitement, discovering these creatures and learning about nature, it fills me with such joy and happiness. And I think I just want to end with a few thoughts. And I know the scale of the challenge ahead of us can seem overwhelming and scary. And it sometimes feels that we're helpless and we're a drop in the ocean. But I think my message to you is to say that if that's the case, then together as drops in the ocean, we are the ocean. And we have the power to turn the tide. We have the power to protect our happy place. We have the power to protect and regenerate our planet, and to ultimately create a world that we can be incredibly proud of for this generation and future generations. And yeah, I would love to just answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver, for the presentation. Thank you for taking us to our happy places. We have some questions in the Q&A section.
Sound didn't work. There were sound effects to the slides, but it's all good.
For the questions, we have one from Hannah. Will ecocide policy also incorporate historical offenses?
I think in an ideal world, yes, but I think it's very hard to retrospectively go back. I think the main challenge will be that the people who were in charge of those businesses would have left those businesses or would have died probably. But yeah, in an ideal world, yeah, I think that would be great to go back. But I think, again, the challenge we have, if the new law is approved, retrospectively applying it to historical things, I think it's trickier. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's a challenge.
I think it's a little bit like reparations for slavery. It's that thing of it's very difficult to go through the legal process of doing that. And it's more kind of a voluntary contribution from people and organizations who feel that it's the morally correct thing to do, even if the law isn't sufficient to prosecute for that. So I wonder if it will be, I doubt it, but I wonder if large corporations might see that their current success is built off a legacy of those externalities not being recognized and incorporated into their operations. So we'll see. Thank you.
We will see. I think what's really interesting is even my co-founder was telling me that he knows someone that works in oil and gas, and their kids are saying to their dad, like, I'm embarrassed, or my father, I'm embarrassed that you're doing. So I think that social side is really interesting, and that's sort of stigma. And I think beyond the legal position where people are embarrassed or ashamed to know someone because of that work that they're doing, I think that can be really powerful.
Thank you, Oliver.
Excitingly, it's gathering real momentum. So I think in 2025, we'll see more commitments from other countries, and I'd love to see within the next decade something coming together rather than 2050.
We have a few more questions. What kind of companies or industries do you see moving first on biodiversity credit schemes?
We had the first ever transaction was from a company called King, who are part of Activision Blizzard, who developed Candy Crush. They've been a client for a few years, so I don't necessarily think there'll be a certain sector. With the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, you've got a lot of financial organizations who are thinking about nature and their nature risks and how they're impacted by nature. So perhaps we're seeing more financial institutions who are thinking about this stuff. But looking across our clients, we have a lot of technology companies, we have a lot of manufacturing companies that we work with. And yeah, those are some of the main sectors that we're working with. And I think how we're trying to, because it's all about with any new market building up demand, one of the big challenges biodiversity credits have had is on the demand side. So I think our strategy is we've got these 700 businesses that we've built trust with over the last 5 years. And most of them are supporting carbon projects outside of the UK. Whereas what we're trying to do is say to them, look, this is your chance to have a UK-based project. You can go and see with your team and actually build that into their portfolio, even if it's 10% of budget. So I think that's how we are uniquely positioned to really drive this market forward, hopefully.
Thank you. And next question. How do they make these plants grow in actual deserts, the half-blown thing you mentioned in Africa?
Yeah, so it's all about when the rain happens, it's about collecting it and allowing it to be absorbed into the soil. So my understanding with the half-moon bins is they're little ditches and they're positioned on the slope. So they catch the rainwater as it flows off. So rather than it just flowing off and away, it flows into the ditch, gets captured, and it gets absorbed into the soil. And even if it scarcely rains, as long as it rains a few times, then that's enough for it to store in the soil and stay there and for plants to grow. And I think what's really cool is there's evidence that this technique has been used for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years. It's great to see it being used again in such an effective way.